at the time of recording this right now, the conference finals, both East and West, are 3-0. The Celtics lead the Pacers 3-0. The Mavericks lead the Wolves 3-0. I think the Celtics and Pacers aren't that surprising, even though the Pacers really blew two of those games. If they were able to close, they had a great opportunity to be up 2-1. But if anybody can close, right? But I just think the Pacers really, really choked away two games. So,
Right.
They've been fighting. I think they put up more of a fight than people thought they were going to put up. But I really want to turn my attention to the Western Conference Finals, where Ant-Man, who people were calling the next Jordan this whole playoff run and prior to, ran into the Dallas Mavericks after beating the champion Denver Nuggets in Game 7. You kind of thought, Minnesota has this momentum. They're going against Dallas, who had a tough, grueling series as well against OKC. But OKC were really clamping up and giving Dallas fits, but Minnesota was the number one defense all year. So I'm thinking, okay, we got a good series here.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, fast forward. The Mavericks are up 3-0, and it just looks like Luka and Kyrie are just like closing these games. And the supporting cast is balling as well, so don't take anything away from them. But it just looks like we have two closers, one guy who's really been here and further, one guy who's been, I think Luka's been to the conference finals, but he's played overseas in some harsh conditions, you know what I mean? So it just looks like experience on the side of the Mavs is too much for like the youth of Anthony Edwards and the Wolves. So right now, and I'm seeing people call it Kyrie's redemption arc. They're saying this is one of the greatest arcs in NBA history, as it looks like he's on a collision course with the Boston Celtics of all teams for the NBA Finals. So I guess, what do you think about Kyrie's redemption arc in the NBA playoffs in 2024?
I would say this: the playoffs have been very interesting, especially seeing some teams that we haven't seen this time around, right? In OKC, Timberwolves, Pacers, and I would say from the West and the East, especially when we're talking about the Pacers versus Celtics and Dallas versus Timberwolves, there are some synonymous traits between the two, especially when you talked about, closing out late, especially Timberwolves. They dropped the ball late, in several games against the Dallas Mavericks, right? And Edwards turned the ball over, right? So it's there are some mirroring traits there. I want to say, Luka and Kyrie, dynamic duo. There was no question in them performing consistently, right? And then you still got PJ Washington, who's always a threat, right? The supporting cast really was, and this is to mention, without certain key players that people would have thought coming into the playoffs that may have been injured or just been sidelined, right? And Tim Hardaway Jr. But nevertheless, they've shown that, like you mentioned, the experience does matter when it matters. So going to your second question about Kyrie, his redemption arc, it's funny because, we've talked over the years about Kyrie when he was in Boston and then him kind of leaving Boston to go play for the Nets. And that whole debacle where, Kyrie leaves LeBron seemingly to, the narrative was him wanting to be his own player, being Batman, Superman. He did kind of, confirm that part of that was true, him wanting to have his own team and being the man. But also, of course, I guess it was just that breakage in the relationship between him and LeBron. But nevertheless, in that stint with Boston, the way Boston fans started to treat him afterwards, or the organization, was kind of like, wow, like they really be trying to shit on Kyrie. And you can kind of see the relationship between Kyrie and Boston. So to see that he's on a collision course to face against Boston and potentially beat them for a championship would be, oh man, I think that would be gratifying for Kyrie himself and Kyrie's fan base for sure,
Yeah, I think that storyline would be up there with Return to Shiganshina, So if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. But no, I think it's crazy. And then and especially thinking about the Celtics and the Nets when Kyrie won the net, they faced off in the playoffs back-to-back years. The Nets beat them in 5, then the Celtics sweep them the next year, right?
Yeah.
So but every time he's in Boston, like you hear the boos raining through the TV. It's really personal for them, So I'm wondering, if they get to the NBA Finals against the Celtics, will that be distracting, or is it kind of different now? Because I'll say this Mavericks team is built a little bit different than that Nets team. Like on that Nets team, even though KD was the best player, Kyrie had to be the leader. I just think because KD's personality and I just want to hoop. I just want to hoop. Um, James Harden's kind of disappearing in the playoffs. I think Kyrie was kind of the leader, but the de facto leader. Opposed to on this Dallas Mavericks team, I think Luka Doncic is the leader, and I think Luka Doncic is the type who's gonna step in and take some of that hate with Kyrie. Right, Luka Doncic drawing with the fans every game, the sideline. So I think it's gonna be a little bit different. It's like, all right, all the hate's not gonna be on you because I'm gonna take some of this hate with you, and then we're going to try to go from there. So I think it'll look a little bit different than the Nets, even though you think about that Nets team, the talent they have with KD and Kyrie and James Harden. This team is probably just overall built better, if that makes sense.
No, I get what you mean. I'll say this. In comparison to the Nets team, I think Kyrie was taking on the run. And I remember we was having this conversation too a couple of years back. I feel like on the Nets, Kyrie playing, especially at that ball dominant PG position, especially when he's in there with KD, just wasn't well suited for him. And when you had KD bringing up the ball like he was a PG and getting stripped, getting 7 turnovers against a really good defensive Celtics team, didn't bode well for them. Whereas with the Mavericks, you have a Luka that can play on the ball and allow Kyrie to free himself up and be more free at the 2 guard position. Because I feel like Kyrie is at best, he plays best when he's at the 2 guard. He's playing off the ball, and then he can kind of bring up the ball. But I feel like just having Luka there that can be a ball dominant player, but also have Kyrie at his hip, I think that it just works wonderfully for them. And it's ironic because I know people's worry in the beginning was, how can you have 2 players who need the ball in their hands? How can they be successful? Well, they're proving that it's working for them.
Yeah,
so I feel like Luka actually. I think Luka's positioning as a playmaker and as a point guard is much different than where KD was at. Even though KD was the man, but I think KD trying to take on or facilitate, it just didn't work, right?
Yeah.
And I think Kyrie just being in the position where he's at with Dallas was also different compared to the Nets.
Yeah, and why I probably didn't have a ton of doubts about Luka and Kyrie is because if you remember those Nets runs, I kind of think, well, one, when the 3 of them played on the court together, which wasn't very often, they hardly lost the game, right? But I feel like it was always 2 of them at a time. It was Harden and KD, it was Kyrie and KD, then it was Kyrie and Harden. But when it was Kyrie and Harden, they were winning a lot of games together. And like you said, Harden was kind of playing the 1. Kyrie was playing that 2 guard, but they were kind of, splitting some of the ball handling responsibilities. But for the most part, Kyrie was off ball, which is kind of what he's doing here with Luka. I think Luka and James Harden game has a lot of similarities. So when KD was hurting, it was just Kyrie and Harden. The Nets were really hooping. I think they had like double-digit win streak. They were winning a lot of games. Kyrie and James Harden were meshing really well. It's kind of when you try to fit that third person back in that, then you got to kind of try to figure it out because now it's a lot of hands in the pot, right? Even though, like I said, when they played together, they didn't lose a lot of games. But now you have Kyrie and Luka as the dominant ball handlers. Everybody else kind of just plays their role. And I think it's just working really well. Even tonight, game 3, just kind of starting the 4th quarter, Kyrie just like, all right, you know what? It's a close game. I'm going to take over. I'm going to go crazy. Then Luka come in like, yo, I got you. Then it's like, Kai's like, okay, you have 2 of the best closers in the game. It's really hard to beat a team like that in a close game, right? So you got Anthony Edwards, who hasn't been on the stage before. Cat, which what a lot of people think of him.
You got Rudy Gobert, the defensive player of the year.
Yeah, I mean, defensive player of the year. He's excellent at the rim, but you getting him out on switches outside of his comfort zone. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to moving his feet, he's no Joakim Noah.
Exactly.
So and then you have 2 of the best closers in the game. So it's just really hard to beat that team in a close game unless you have formidable closers on the other end as well. So I think that's kind of why we see Minnesota in trouble here. And in terms of Ant Edwards is pretty young, but guys like Conley, not that he's old, but how much longer does Conley have? Is Cat the right number 2? So they have a lot of things to figure out themselves. But Mavericks and Celtics on a collision course, I couldn't write that story better myself. Like I said, I know it's going to be electric. The Celtics fans are going to boo and they're going to say crazy things to Kai, but it's just like, if we get a good series, what more could you ask for? Like, and then hypothetically, if Kyrie were to beat the Celtics in the NBA Finals, bro, that would be like probably the craziest thing in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I think if he, it's not only that if he beats them, but if he performs really well, if he dogs them, he really gonna have the last laugh.
But one thing I think of is ESPN. When Kyrie got traded to the Mavericks, I believe it was ESPN. They rated the trade a D. Like that was the grade they gave it, the letter D.
Right.
And I mean, look at it now. Kevin Durant is not currently playing in the NBA, right? Sorry, he's not playing in the playoffs right now. James Harden's not currently playing in the NBA right now. The NBA in the playoffs. I keep saying like these guys retire. I'm tripping. It's late. Don't worry about me. But like Kevin, and I'm just going back to that Nets team because the Nets broke it up. Harden wanted out. Harden saw the writing on the wall. He wanted out. The Nets felt like they did KD a favor. KD, you want to go to the Suns? We'll trade you to the Suns. Ka, we don't like you, so we're going to punish you and send you to the Mavericks. And kind of look at the way things worked out. I think that's why you shouldn't do spiteful things in life. You know what I mean?
I knew you had to get that off your chest. You mean a Kyrie fan? He said, "Yeah, that looks spiteful."
Bro, you shouldn't be spiteful, bro. You should try to do what's best for you.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. The Nets did them dirty.
Don't do what you think's gonna hurt somebody else.
Yeah, especially with that whole vaccine situation, bro. They did them dirty. I'm not gonna lie. So it's good. Kyrie's situation now, where the Dallas Mavericks are now, and I can't wait to see that matchup in the finals for sure.
Yeah, but speaking of fans, I'm also a JT fan, and part of me wanted to see Celtics and Wolves in the finals because I think personally JT is still better than Ant Edwards. But I know a lot of people are on the Ant Edwards trade, so people are like, Ant Edwards is the one. So I kind of wanted to see that matchup, but Kyrie, Luka Doncic, JT, JB, Celtics Mavs finals kind of looks like where we're going, as both series are 3-0 right now, and I'm here for it. Yep. So if we see the Celtics and the Mavs in the finals, jump in the comment section. Tell me, who do you think will win the NBA finals there? Do you think this is the best redemption arc we've seen in a while in the NBA in terms of Kyrie Irving? And let's not forget about Luka Doncic, who's really hooping. Is he changing the narrative? Yes, he's still kind of like complaining at the refs, but people were saying he's a selfish player. All he cares about is himself. So, tell me, what do you think about the NBA playoffs? I think we had a great playoffs this year, and I can't wait to see the culmination of it. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. 2 cents short of $1, and we're out.